In the video you're about to watch, Jasmine Crockett is about to openly demonstrate that the Republican Party has been financially influenced by Russia. Let's delve into it together, and I'll share my opinions at the end. But before we roll the clip, I want you to pay close attention, not just to what she says, but to what isn't said in response. Because when Crockett poses a direct challenge to her Republican colleagues, asking them to confirm something as basic and undeniable as the fact that Russia invaded Ukraine, what follows is not a chorus of agreement. It's silence. Cold, awkward silence. That silence tells its own story. It speaks of a party that no longer operates on principle or fact, but on fear. Fear of crossing Trump, fear of breaking from the narrative, fear of admitting the obvious if it risks angering the man who still controls their every move. This moment goes beyond politics. It cuts to the core of whether elected officials are still willing to stand up for truth when it contradicts their party line. And if you watch closely, you'll see why so many are asking the hard question, has the GOP been compromised? Let's take a look.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's so interesting to me that we all swear an oath to the Constitution, and we say that we take that oath seriously. But when it comes into actually doing something that looks like preserving that oath or looks like preserving the Constitution, we get a little wobbly, and I'm not really understanding what's going on. Freedom of press doesn't look like kicking out the Washington Post, or actually the Huffington Post has been kicked out. We know that the Associated Press has been kicked out, and now the Washington Post is not going to allow for op-eds in any way if for some reason they criticize the sitting president of the United States. What this is starting to feel like is a smaller version of Russia. And I am trying to tell you that we are nothing like Russia. We are not supposed to be like Russia, but that is what we've got going on. And I'm sorry, I know that some of my colleagues still struggle with answering the question of who won the election in 2020. And you may have felt a way when you had social media checking people and saying, no, Trump did not win the election in 2020. That is absolutely factual. And unfortunately, because some people got all riled up because they believed the lies, they ended up getting locked up because they decided that they were going to believe the lies. They ended up at the Capitol on January 6th, and they were trying to tear this thing apart because they felt like their country was falling apart in front of their eyes because for whatever reason, there were people in power that were peddling a lie about the election. We also know, and some of y'all may still say that COVID was a hoax. COVID wasn't a hoax. Tell that to the over 1 million people that died under Donald Trump's first watch. It wasn't a hoax. So no, I do believe that it was okay. In fact, I do believe that it was ethically right for social media to check people because you had people that didn't know anything about science and decided that they were going to put out whatever lies or propaganda or conspiracy theories they wanted to, and people died. At some point in time, we have to evaluate what is factual, and I know that facts hurt y'all, and I just wish we could get on the same page, but we do know during the presidential election that the president would not go and participate in anything if fact-checking was going to be a part of it, because he didn't want to be fact-checked. We know that the vice president got upset in his vice presidential debate when he was fact-checked. It used to be a time in this country that we as members of Congress or elected officials thought that it was okay to just tell the truth. Instead, we're pushing conspiracy theories, and some of them are killing people. It's the same thing that we have coming out of Doge. It's the reason that people are dying. It's the reason that farmers are losing their farms, because we continue to peddle conspiracy theories. It is time for us to say, Mr. President, guess what? Russia invaded Ukraine. Can we at least agree on that one? Facts matter. Yo, this is literally potentially putting us into an international crisis. We may be heading towards the next world war because we have a president that wants to pal around with Putin and wants to do everything to make him feel good, including lying about who invaded who. Mr. Chair, I got a minute left, but I really want to yield to any of my colleagues and ask them if they will say today, very basically, that when it came down to the war in Ukraine, that it was not Ukraine that invaded Russia, it was the other way around. Is there anybody in here that has enough courage to say that Russia invaded Ukraine?
You can have my time.
And this is yet the problem. This is the problem. That is not infringing upon free speech.
Will the gentlelady yield?
I will yield to the right.
Thank you, Ms. Crockett. To be clear, your challenge, I think, was across the aisle, because I think every member on your side of the aisle agrees with the obvious fact that Vladimir Putin ordered the filthy, bloody, imperialistic invasion of Ukraine. And in fact, at the time, Donald Trump as president never denied it. In fact, he praised it. He said it was, quote, an act of genius when Putin ordered the invasion of Ukraine. So I would hope some of our colleagues would consent to at least that historical point, since we think history is so important. There are people who want to relive that in our oversight report.
And therein lies the problem.
The time of the general.
So, interestingly enough, when Jasmine Crockett opened the floor with what should have been a straightforward question, asking members of Congress to publicly acknowledge whether or not they agree that Russia invaded Ukraine, you'd expect a room full of hands to go up, or at least a unanimous verbal confirmation, right? But no. What followed instead was complete and utter silence. Not a single person on the Republican side stood up to speak. There was one faint voice that muttered something, almost under their breath, but I highly doubt that individual was part of the GOP. And that silence, that right there should send chills down your spine, because it speaks volumes. It's not just an awkward pause. It's a reflection of how far the party has shifted, how cautious they've become, and how deeply entangled they now appear to be in Donald Trump's political shadow. No one in that room seemed willing to speak for themselves. No one dared to deviate from the unspoken script. And that's what's most alarming. They're no longer operating as independent representatives of the people. Instead, they seem to be functioning as echo chambers, parroting Trump's narratives without hesitation, even when those narratives tiptoe dangerously close to foreign propaganda. And we know this isn't how it always was. Go back just a few years before Trump took office. Look at the public statements, the votes, the congressional support. Many of these same GOP members were vocal and consistent supporters of Ukraine. They championed foreign aid, condemned Russian aggression, and proudly aligned themselves with defending democratic nations against authoritarian regimes. There was moral clarity back then. There was principle. But now we're looking at a political party that's undergone a complete transformation. That same clarity has turned to confusion, and that principle has been replaced by fear. Fear of losing Trump's approval, fear of being labeled a traitor within their own base, fear of falling out of favor with the man who still commands absolute loyalty from a large portion of their voters. And that's what makes Jasmine Crockett's challenge so powerful. It was a chance for Republicans to prove that they still had a backbone, that they still recognized basic international facts, that they still value truth over political calculation. And yet, not a single one took that opportunity. Not one had the courage to stand up and say, yes, Russia invaded Ukraine. Putin is responsible. That should be terrifying, because it means we now have members of Congress who would rather protect Donald Trump's image than stand up to a hostile foreign power. They would rather remain silent and complicit than risk offending the former president by stating a simple, well-documented truth. And let me just say, if this doesn't convince you that Russia now holds influence, either directly or indirectly, over the GOP, then I honestly don't know what will. Because this wasn't a policy disagreement. This wasn't about taxes or regulations or healthcare. This was about foreign invasion, a black and white moment of international law and human suffering. And still, they chose silence. Still, they chose loyalty to Trump over accountability to history. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm a huge admirer of Jasmine Crockett. The way she challenges the system, the way she calls things out plainly, and the way she continues to hold her ground amidst a room full of people trying to spin, deflect, or gaslight, it's genuinely refreshing. Watching this unfold as someone who lives overseas, I'll be honest, a lot of what's happening in American politics is truly baffling. It's surreal to witness a nation that once prided itself on truth and transparency now inching toward political cultism. And make no mistake, that's what this is starting to look like, a political cult. A group of lawmakers more devoted to appeasing one man than they are to upholding the Constitution or protecting democratic values. Instead of representing their constituents, instead of fighting for the interests of everyday Americans, many of them seem to have chosen blind obedience to their orange messiah, following his directives, echoing his language, and prioritizing his legacy over the very foundation of the country they swore to defend. It's deeply unsettling. So, I genuinely want to hear from all of you. Do you think Russia now has a significant hold over the Republican Party? Do you think there's something Trump is hiding? Something that Putin knows about? Or do you believe Trump has specific goals that require Putin's help, and that's why this strange loyalty persists? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I read every single one of them. Let's have this conversation because moments like this deserve to be unpacked, not ignored. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.